All right, let's talk about a book that gets some pretty intense reactions. It's been called Dangerous, a sociopath's Bible, and a secret weapon for the powerful. We're diving into Robert Greene's The 48 Laws of Power. Let's find out why it has such a wild reputation.
So, is this really the most dangerous book in the world? I mean, that's a huge claim, right? But its reputation, well, it's built on some genuinely startling facts.
I mean, just think about this for a second. It's banned in numerous US prisons. At the same time, it's been called the sociopath's Bible. But then, it's beloved by rappers, feared by executives, and studied by politicians. That range is insane. When you see reactions that extreme, you just know there's something potent going on in those pages. It's basically a modern-day manual for Machiavelli, which is exactly why we need to dig in and understand. Okay, so let's start with that dangerous reputation. You know, most self-help books are all about being open, kind, and collaborative. This book, yeah, it does the exact opposite. We're talking about advice like crushing your enemies and hiding what you're really thinking. So you have to ask, right? Why would any normal, decent person even want to touch this thing? Well, the answer comes down to a pretty cold, hard reality. Robert Greene himself puts it this way. You might think you can opt out of the power game, but you can't. You are either a player or you are a pawn. And that really gets to the core of it, doesn't it? He's basically saying the world is just one giant game of power. And whether you like it or not, you're already on the board. So the only choice you really have is, do you want to be a player who actually knows the rules or just a pawn that gets moved around by everyone else?
And that idea leads us right into the book's core philosophy. Let's talk about the amoral art of power. This is where we start to peel back that scary reputation and see what the book is actually trying to get at.
So let's just address the elephant in the room. Is this book evil? Is it really just a handbook for manipulators and sociopaths? Well, according to the author himself, it's a little more complicated than that. The way the book presents it, power is amoral. What does that mean? Well, think of it like gravity or a hammer. A hammer isn't good or evil, right? You can use it to build a beautiful house, or you can use it to tear one down. The tool itself is neutral. And Greene argues that power is exactly the same. It's just a fundamental force in how people interact. To ignore it, well, that's just being naive. And this really sets up two completely different ways of looking at the world. On one hand, you've got the naive view. The world is fair, it's transparent. If I just work hard and have good intentions, I'll be rewarded. But then there's the power view, which is what this book is all about. And that view says, no, the world operates on a much deeper, more strategic and psychological level. It's all about that subtle influence. Okay, maybe the best way to think about this is like learning martial arts. You don't learn karate so you can go around starting fights, right? Of course not. You learn it so that if someone tries to attack you, you know how to defend yourself. And that's the argument for the 48 laws. They're a kind of social martial arts. All right, enough with the philosophy. Let's get concrete and see what these laws actually look like in action. We're going to look at a few of the real heavy hitters from the book and see how they play out in the real world. Let's kick things off with law number 1. It's probably the most famous one in the whole book. The law is never outshine the master. And man, this is such a classic trap, especially for talented, ambitious people. Picture this. You get a new job, you're super eager to impress, so you go all out, showing your boss just how brilliant you are. And then, what happens? All of a sudden, you're sidelined. Or worse, you're fired. What went wrong? Well, when you outshine your boss, you're not impressing them. You're making them feel insecure. And trust me, an insecure master is a very dangerous person to have around. This isn't just about kissing up or stroking an ego. It's about neutralizing their envy before it turns into a real threat to your career. The takeaway here is a bit counterintuitive. Your job is to make your masters appear more brilliant than they are. It's a kind of strategic humility, and if you do it right, they'll end up lifting you right up along with them. Okay, so that's about managing your superiors. Now let's talk about managing your own words. And this next law feels incredibly relevant today. Law number 4 is always say less than necessary. Think about that for a second. In our world of social media and just constant oversharing, this one really hits home. The more you talk, the more ordinary you seem. And let's be honest, the more likely you are to say something dumb that you can never, ever take back. And there's some really powerful psychology behind this. You know how silence can make people feel uncomfortable? They feel this need to rush in and fill that void.
And when they do that, they often end up revealing their own plans, their insecurities, their weaknesses, all without you having to do a thing. Real power players impress and even intimidate by saying less. It creates this aura of control, of depth, and it means that when you do finally speak, your words carry so much more weight.
All right, now we're getting to what is maybe the most ruthless, the most cold-blooded sounding law in the entire book. Law number 10, infection. Avoid the unhappy and unlucky. Yeah, I know, that sounds incredibly harsh, right? But Greene's argument is that this is absolutely crucial for your own self-preservation, because whether we like it or not, we are all so deeply affected by the moods, the attitudes, the energies of the people we spend our time with.
Now, the book is really careful to make a distinction here. It's not talking about people who are going through some temporary bad luck. It's talking about the kind of people who seem to create their own misfortune over and over again. They're described as energy takers, almost like emotional black holes, a kind of virus of self-destruction. And if you try to get too close to save them, they'll just pull you down into their chaos. So the real takeaway is learning to tell the difference between empathy and entanglement. You surround yourself with the fortunate, with energy givers, not out of cruelty, but as a strategic act of mental and emotional self-defense.
So, okay, after hearing some of these laws, you might be wondering, how are we supposed to feel about this book? That brings us to the final, and I think the most important takeaway here. It's really the most useful way to frame this whole thing.
It really comes down to this. You can think of these laws as either a sword or a shield. You can absolutely use them as a sword, to manipulate, to deceive, to hurt people. Or you can use them as a shield. And the shield is all about recognizing when these tactics are being used against you so you can effectively defend yourself.
And ultimately, that's the most empowering way to look at this book. It's not about becoming a monster. It's a study of human nature in its rawest, most unfiltered form. The goal is to read it not to become a villain, but to make damn sure you never ever become a victim. It's about understanding the game so you can spot a manipulator from a mile away and guarantee you are never ever anyone else's pawn.
And that brings us right back to the question we started with, but hopefully with a totally new perspective. The power game is being played all around you every single day. So the real question is, are you a player or are you a pawn?